Thank you, Miguel, for giving this overview of the project and the platform. We will now move on to having Miguel Mitre, please, who is from Valladolid, who's living in Valladolid, and who has worked on sustainable buildings even before they have been called sustainable buildings, I heard yesterday. And so he has a lot of knowledge to contribute, and he will speak to us about the next steps towards decarbonizing the building stock from a view of the Green Building Council España. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Natalie. Well, it is my pleasure to be here, of course. I live 5 minutes from here, so I like these international projects that take me so little to get to the venue. I'm very fond of the work of CARTIF, and also I'm very fan of the work of CARTIF because I think they're doing a great job. As Natalie said, I'm an architect, and I've been working in the sustainable building I wouldn't say sector, because I don't think it had a sector. Maybe we are creating a sector now, but I started working in this in 1983, so I've already trajectory in the field. But I'm seeing that things are changing now a lot. So thanks very much, CARTIF. Miguel, where are you? Thanks very much for this, heavy stuff presentation. He speaks very quickly. I don't. His presentation was deeply digital. Mine is going to be analogic, in a sense. I'm going to try and give you the vision from our Green Building Council. In relation to the decarbonization by year 2050. It doesn't try to be totally comprehensive, but I'll try to give you some hints on how we see this, and I hope this is different from other things you've seen so that you get something new, because we tend to hear all the time the same things. I'll start by speaking a bit about GBCe España. Green Building Council España is the organization I work with, or I work for, or I work at, or whatever. I work, in any case. This organization was created 10 years ago. We are celebrating our 10th anniversary now. And it has a role of promoting sustainability in the building sector. We've heard some of these things. Obviously, we don't realize how important buildings are. One of my favorite sentences is that we take buildings for granted. They are there all the way, but we don't really pay attention to them. This is starting to change thanks to projects like this and others. But buildings are there all the time. The same as our body is always there, so we don't pay attention to it, maybe. But we need to change that. Now we have many ways to do that. GBCe España is doing this together with many other GBCs in the world by the application of the Sustainable Development Goals and many other ways, and by the integration of work into other global networks. But more specifically, in terms of the work we do here in Spain, we started promoting deep energy renovation many years ago, because we thought that there was a new view on the country, on the building sector of the country about renovation. If you remember, Spain was building, in year 2007, Spain built nearly 900,000 dwellings, which is a tremendously high number of dwellings for the needs, which probably were in the range of 200,000 or something per year. So we started thinking about how this should happen like 6 years ago. Build Upon is a project I'm going to be talking a lot in this presentation because it's a community of stakeholders we created to contribute to the national renovation strategies, which I will describe in further detail. We're also working with our technical code on a sustainability roadmap for its evolution in the future. We also have a circular economy task force, which is pretty advanced in the country because circular economy in the build sector is something that is coming, but we should make it evolve from waste exclusively to a more comprehensive approach. We also have our rating tool called Verde. We have a platform for sustainable materials. We're also working in some things that are maybe connected to this project, and I've been very interested. I knew something about OptEEmAL, but not as much, and I'm really looking forward to seeing this tool into action. I think it would be extremely valuable. So we are also in that space. We are working in a global project called Advancing Net Zero. We're also working on another European project about green mortgages for renovation. So as you can see, a number of things. And we are also, we are the gate from the European Commission to the countries about this new sustainability approach called levels. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but levels defines these 6 macro indicators and then a set of macro objectives, and then a set of indicators so that we can evolve in a way towards sustainability, because we speak a lot about energy and so on, sometimes about CO2, but we really need to have a more comprehensive view on sustainability. So you can see this at our webpage if you are interested in it. So it's we do many things in a sense because that's necessary so that we can try and make the market evolve. Okay, so next steps. That was the purpose of this. Well, of course, Miguel has described this a bit also. I'm going to describe it in a different way. But the Clean Energy for All Europeans package, which is the winter package, the so-called 2016 winter package, basically define these spaces. Energy efficiency first, demonstrating leadership in renewables, and fair deal for consumers. So when we speak about energy efficiency and we speak about buildings, we normally connect it in a weird way because we think about machines in many cases and we think little about construction. That's something we need to change. Okay, so supposedly that is going to create a big change if we are able to make it happen. About the new energy performance of buildings directive, there are big changes we are going to see and describe, but also we need to have changes in financing and ICTs, and we are seeing an example of that. But it is very clear because of all the directives that came out of the winter package, the energy performance of buildings directive was the first one. And I think it was the more important, so to say, or the most important, so to say. So there is a very clear focus on buildings, and this is very new because, as I said, we tend to take buildings for granted, so we don't really pay much attention to them. And this new EPBD brings this, basically these things Miguel has also described already. Renovation strategies. So we need to strengthen one more these renovation strategies. This is important. We don't do it well. E-mobility is key, and that must happen in connection with building somehow at least at a building level, but much better at a district or city level. Etc. There are new things such as the smart readiness indicators for buildings, which is a very new thing in terms of how good that building would respond to the technological evolution and be aligned with it and so on. So, and by the end, a decarbonization of the building sector. Well, basically, I think this, the good understanding of this, obviously, is first to reduce. I mean, I think that in other countries, the UK, for instance, they would understand decarbonization very easily. I don't think we understand that this easily in Spain or in other countries. But basically, it means to start with reducing the demand, of course, and then to apply efficient solutions. So there's always, through the years, there's been a lot of discussion on whether good architectural bioclimatic design was energy efficiency or not, or was renewables or not. So there's a mixture of things. Now all those things are getting together into something that is oriented to change the fuel we use, and the way for that first is to reduce the demand, obviously, and then to supply it efficiently from renewable source. So basically this is decarbonization. And that, of course, can be done. Whoever says this is impossible, I mean, we hear many voices from the car sector. We hear all that continuously. We cannot change that, but interestingly enough, they've been preparing for that for decades, and they say they cannot change because they would prefer to change more slowly, but basically they are going to do it quickly. Okay, and financing. Okay, so can this really happen or not? Because it's this image by Greenpeace is describes very clearly this, because you know, if you remember the green jackets in Paris, I mean, some cents, if you create a higher price of some cents in something, you can have thousands of people on strike. Of course, you need to need to understand how to do that, but this is not easy. So the solution is a strategy, a good strategy. But I don't think we are good at strategies. This is the analysis done by the Building Performance Institute Europe in 2014 about the strategies. So the strategies were, not very good, really. Surprisingly enough, our strategy was very well rated by this second analysis by the Joint Research Center, like 2 years later. I was personally very pleased and even more surprised that this happened, because I don't think it really was a strategy, and in the end it didn't work well, because the sequel, which was the 2017 strategy, also by the Building Performance Institute Europe, was rated this way. I must say that the political situation has a tremendous effect on all this, and I'm going to describe how I see this is bad, but very clearly we are not doing well our strategies. So I'm going to discuss Build Upon, because in Build Upon we came up to some conclusions that for me are like the headlines of what should be done in the future as next steps. And I will develop a bit more some of them. Okay, so Build Upon was a Horizon 2020 project, coordination and support action with 13 countries. This is a view of the web page with 13 languages, which is funny. The purpose of it was to assist public authorities. I like this because it means public authorities need assistance very clearly. So to define the sustainable energy policies, in this case the deep energy renovation strategies by empowering stakeholders. Very interesting. So we created, you see the numbers. We had more than 100 events organized all through Europe in 1 year, which is a lot. 6, 7, 8 in each country. Involved nearly 3,000 stakeholders, etc. Recorded 750 initiatives at something we call the Reno Wiki and so on, and define a way into the future. This was supposed to be a good example of collaborative policy making. I'm presenting it this way because at the beginning this looked to me like a weird combination of words, collaborative policy making. And so it looked like this to me at the beginning, a weird combination of words, and at the end I realized it was a weird combination of words, because even though we were trying to have a good input to our government, in this case our government didn't want to receive it. So, well, this was the case of Spain, a number of workshops about regions, cities, financing, professional actors, the industry, social stakeholders, etc. And this is an example. Every country did this, and we came up with something I call the Reno amendments. So it's a mixture of a recommendment and renovation, and it means that these are suggestions you should apply. When you recommend something, it's just suggestion. But in this case, it was a suggestion like a commandment to the governments. What was that output? Most of the amendments or recommendments had to do with the offer, with the supply, I mean, from the industry. Less than that about the administration, and 20% about the demand, which is already weird, because I think that the demand should be more important. If you see this in detail, I divided the three parts of this. This would be the supply or the offer. That would be the administration, and this is the users. So one of the big conclusions of this project was that we were missing exactly the objective of our work. We were doing a lot with, when we started with this, we started describing a stakeholder map and whatever, and there was no buyer in the stakeholder map. So it was like a map from the supply. We need to change that a lot. So here you see that there were many recommendations about financing, whatever, and very few about user activation. You can see this also here, that we had a lot of participation from businesses and also from the public, not from the national government, very little. So we had cities involved, regions, but not the national government. They didn't want to know about this. But in the end, we didn't have the citizen. Okay. This was the output of our build upon work in Spain, our recommendments. And this is a very clear structure of what we need to do, because we said politically our country is not at the right place. With the change of government we had what was 9 months ago, this improved a lot, but now who knows, we have elections in April 28 again, but the previous government didn't have any position at all. The structure of the institutions, that is very difficult. There is no conversation between organisms and so on, and that makes it extremely difficult. No horizontally, no vertically, nothing. The strategic and legal framework, this has to change as well, because otherwise it would be difficult. The administrative processes are not easy for the citizens, and that makes it very difficult. There is not enough capacity. We are speaking now of building maybe of renovating between 200,000 and hopefully 600,000 dwellings per year. There's no capacity for that at this moment. Professional services, this is improving, but it's relatively low. The market offer is also very flat. Not many new ideas. We need to have a new economy, because if not, it's impossible. We also heard that the lower energy prices and so on, the low CO2 price, whatever, it's renovation doesn't pay, and they even say it. So it's like saying, it's like as if a mother would say, oh, okay, buying a coat for my children doesn't pay. I prefer to pay medicines because they are so cheap, or something like that. So you would not say that, it's stupid. Energy poverty, whatever, communication, culture, and citizen activation. I'm going to, so this showed that the situation was totally dysfunctional. So it could not work, by no means could work. So you really need to work with all these things at the same time. That's the difficult thing, and it needs to happen, you know, simultaneously. You can have a lot of political drive, but then you don't put the tools, you have nothing. So the problem is extremely complex, and some things have more potential to drive than others, but you need to have all the balls in the air. So in terms of political positioning, this is an idea that came up to me also in the process of Build Upon. And it is the idea that even though we live in very distributed spaces with different walls, conceptually, our walls are the same thing. So in this virtual world we live now, we could say that walls, you know, the envelope of the buildings are a national infrastructure. They are very distributed and so on, but they have the same concept of protecting the citizen in front of the exterior. So it is the very same thing. Why wouldn't it have a unique treatment politically and important as national infrastructure? This is, I mentioned before, the Advancing Net Zero project. This is a global project where we are having, trying to get commitments from regions, countries, from companies. In Spain, there are 2 regions committed now, Catalonia and Navarra. No cities so far. We're working with Madrid, maybe to get them on. But this is just a commitment you make, and very recently the state of California joined, for instance. So, and they commit to be net zero earlier than 2050, normally in 2030 or 2040. Strategic and linear framework. Well, this is a map we are preparing at GBCe España to try and understand the legal framework of this. It's not easy. So, but if you got, we think this is necessary because it's so complex. So we are working on that, and also, I mean, things are going on. I don't know, our national building code about the energy and the way to treat the envelopes of the buildings and so on. So we have a definition of a nearly zero energy building, but we are the most advanced country in Europe because for us the nearly zero energy building is just the building that complies with the code now. So we did it very easily, very quickly. That is not bad in the sense that you can change your code later on, and it is done already, but this is funny. We are working also together with the government to have there is a draft already on the energy transition and climate change law where buildings are something, because, you know, normally buildings end up not being important enough. But here we are seeing that at least 100,000 should be refurbished between 21 and 30. That is okay to me, provided we go on growing. I mean, we should start by doing maybe 20,000 dwellings per year. That would be very good if we could do that this year. If we could double that every year, we would have a very big amount in very, very soon. So we are working on that. About urban planning, I think we really need to change all the concepts. We are very used to see this, less used to see this, but this is the way to do urban planning. And for me, this is the way to do urban planning, so that you really see as an energy section of your location and really take into account what you have underneath and above in a comprehensive way. We don't do this at all. You just plan on horizontal, and that's it. And for me, the framework for this is the urban agenda. Urban agendas come from the 2030 agenda of the United Nations, and then a global urban agenda was derived, a European urban agenda, and now Spain is working a lot on the urban agenda. For me, this is the guidelines for the urban development are very clearly here. They can be improved, maybe, but this is very basic. Of course, levels I described before. We are working on this, trying to have a movement in Europe, which is, this is not a mandatory tool, but it is a tool you can use at different levels to assess the sustainability of your buildings. Now it's in a pilot phase, but we hope this will be out as a non-mandatory yet tool in 1 year or 1 year and a half. One of the conclusions of Build Upon was that there was a tremendous problem of data gathering. We recorded 750 initiatives, but I don't think we knew the results of more than 10 or 20 of those. So this is why we created a new project that has been approved. It's called Build Upon Square. It's not, the grant agreement is not signed yet. We hope the project will start in May. But in this project, we are trying to develop this together with the Governor of Mayors, trying to integrate the reporting procedures that the Governor of Mayors has with a more comprehensive thing in a simpler way, because when you try and create an impact framework, you are not only speaking about the type of data you want to gather and the quality of that, but also of the people who should apply that, whether they know how to do it or not, whether they must do it out of the work hours or whatever. So you really need to create all that to make it work. So this project will try and have that in 8 pilot cities and then extrapolate it to 24 and have a wider impact. About administrative processes, I think we are improving a bit, but if you are dealing with housing associations or ownership communities, if you are dealing with groups of people who take decisions in a difficult way, you really should be flexible with the process. One of the most promising looks into the future is the so-called building renovation passport. For me, at the beginning, I didn't understand it well, and I thought that, well, if you design a renovation, you don't want to do it in pieces because you do it at one given time, and then you spend 25, 30 more years not doing anything. But if you try and understand better the concept, this is like a plan. This is like having a plan. So my idea is, if Spain, for instance, or whatever country, says, okay, let's have a plan together to decarbonize the building sector by 2050. What's your plan? Do you have a plan in your home? So this is the way we intend to communicate this. And in that case, you can decide that, okay, you don't need to change your boiler now, but maybe you do it in 15 years, but now you start by renovating your facade and so on, and you plan to do the other thing, or maybe you even plan to create collective installations at district level or whatever, gathering a number of housing or whatever types of buildings in the district to find synergies. About the economy, we could say a lot. We are learning a lot. I mean, this is a view of now the building sector has very small comfort, more consumption, and a lot of pollution. If you even consider the production of buildings, more pollution. So we really need to change that into an economy that is circular. And for that, of course, you need to have zero energy buildings, you need to have renewable energies, and you really need to have this, which is very important, in economy, which is a higher value. We are starting to understand that renovated buildings do have a higher value, and that may be the key driver so that we have a circular economy here and we decarbonize totally the building sector. So we come from this to this. About green mortgages, well, I think this graph describes here something that we found. Miguel said there are people who talk who don't speak the same language. That happens all the time, Miguel, by the way. You are young, but that happens all the time. But when you are in the financial sector and when you are a project developer, big communication is totally impossible. There are some contact points. You may agree on what a mortgage is, but that's about it, or whatever. So you really need, because the financial sector, when they speak about an investment project, they are speaking about those concepts, predictability of risks. While you, as project designer, you are in love with your project and all that, and you are speaking, how good the project is and so on, about very different things. So this project was created to try and solve the EMAP, Energy Efficiency Mortgage Action Plan was created for that, and this was the type of publicity that we or they were using. So very nice and so on, and well, we already have a number of banks who do have green mortgages. And we even conducted a workshop on this with a number of results. Basically, now we are trying to structure the interest on green financing. I'm not sure mortgages is the key thing for renovation, because it is very clear for new buildings. When you buy a new building and it's high, the efficiency is high, then you have a mortgage. But if you are in your home and you want to renovate, you probably don't mortgage your home to renovate. Whereas if you buy an apartment or a home and you want to renovate it, then it works. So we need to find the place where that works well. But in connection with building renovation passports, and the most important thing is this communication. This is my favorite one, and I'm going to conclude with this, because in the spaces I was describing before, market attractiveness, communication culture, citizens activation, all those things. Building renovation is extremely boring. So that's one of the causes why people are not interested in that. If it was thrilling, everybody would like to do renovation. So we need to change a number of things. But for me, there is a very important thing about how, and this is also important, because we tend to fall, we need to become the user, the final user, something that is there. It is the citizen, it is us. So we need to start changing this way. How does the citizen see the administration, the financiers? So if we have this palette, I can choose. You can have your choice as well. But the key thing would, could this be better? Could this be better? How could we make the change in any one of them, so that people cannot stop themselves from buying renovation? It's the question of trust. This is something I learned in the process of Build Upon, and it is that, a given group of people is like an elephant. Well, we all are like an elephant with a driver on our head. So the driver on our head tells us, I shouldn't eat that cake. And the elephant says, I'll take the cake, and then we skip. But if it is a group of people, it's more difficult. So what we tend to do normally is to try and convince the elephant with good reasons, maybe some force, pushing, or even praying. But what we need is to show a good practice. So this is something we don't do. We prepared a proposal for communication, a Horizon 2020 proposal. It's wonderful, with TV programs. Call it reliability show, and it was not approved because obviously the evaluators didn't understand the need for that. But that is because the evaluators think technically, so we need to change some way of thinking. I'm concluding with this slide. Okay. Never before the building sector received such an intensive attention as now. So the situation is very good to change, or maybe not. But the situation is really unique. Very complex because it involves these things: the citizen at the center, energy empowerment, renewables to cost, the balance to zero, technological integration. I think many of these things are in OptEEmAL, so congratulations, because you have a tool that is incorporating many of these things. Electric mobility, ICTs, smart readiness, etc. European directives are the driving force, but in the countries, I doubt this is happening at the same speed. See, this is happening at the cities, though, so the cities may be the place. But if you look at the political discourse in Spain, for instance, now, not 1 per 1 million of the time is devoted to this. Well, we have more severe problems, you know. This is an opportunity, not an obligation, and those who are understanding it now would be in a better position in the future, in a short future. And the national regulations should be done collaboratively. But for that we need to learn how to do it. Okay, right now, it doesn't make sense to just to fulfill your obligations. You need to go beyond. We need to have a plan, as I said, and we need to share that plan with a roadmap. We can think positive. The nearly zero energy building for me is depressing because I know the history. At the beginning it was net zero, and then the political discussion made it nearly. So describe zero. No. Your zero may not be my zero. If we say positive, that's okay. It may be a bit more, a bit less, but it is positive. So think positive, the sooner the better, and an extraordinary communication effort is going to be needed. I think there is too much. Yeah, there is a lot, maybe too much intelligence, but not communication intelligence. So we need to work on that a lot. This is my view of the cities. You know, it's if you pour energy or if you pour water into the buildings, what is going to happen? Well, this is how I see the cities and what should be changed so that this becomes better. Thanks very much.